Hi, nowadays we are all talking about coronavirus, this COVID-19 virus that is spreading around the world. And I want to talk to you about a simplified simulation that I have done, inspired in the publication, the article that Harry Stevens published last March 14 at the Washington Post. He was analyzing how coronavirus spread exponentially. And if we go to the article, he explains very nicely that the coronavirus is characterized by an exponential curve of people getting sick, infected. This curve happens in the United States, but the same pattern kinds of happens in many other countries. So he explains quite clearly that we have healthy people, but then a sick person, this in brown, might get in contact with other people, and then they might become sick also. He also introduces the concept of recovered person, which means they are already immune. That means that after being sick, you might recover, and that is translated in a different color. And then he shows with simulation what can happen when an initial individual gets sick and everybody in town moves randomly and interact with each other. So the sick people, we have a curve of the sick people and people that start recovering after a while. So at the end, most of the population has recovered. In fact, all of the population has recovered. Although here they don't represent casualties. It's a simulation and it's a simplification and explains how simulations can be run to simulate situations where people are isolated. Some areas are isolated from others, but in reality, everybody agrees that it's really, really difficult to have real isolated areas. So at the end, the illness, the virus spreads along all the population. Obviously, the curve is different. So this wall was making its work, but still the population gets sick. So what the article explains is that the recommendation is that less people should move. So here in this simulation, again, only one initial person is sick, is infected, but only a quarter of the population are in fact moving. So the rest are staying at home. Okay, that means that much less people are getting sick. We can see how the curve is much more flattened than previous curves. And then he does a last simulation with only 1 out of 8 people is able to move. And here we can see how really the spreading it's much lower. Only a few of them are spreading. So here we have the curve is much flattened. Of course, there is illness is distributed, but we can see the effects. So at the end, he compares how important is to have this restriction of movement, because it really makes a difference in the curves. Okay. So it's a really interesting article, and I would like to draw the attention to this NetLogo multi-agent based simulation framework that has been used for a long time. It was introduced by Yuri Wylensky in 1998, and in fact there some models were produced about how viruses spread, and I took inspiration on the model called Virus to develop the model that I am going to use. This model will mimic somehow the article, or allow us to play with the effect in the article by Harry Stevens. This is the web page of the virus model from NetLogo that I was mentioning. And here we have the model I was mentioning, the model I have generated. First of all, let me show the interface. Here we have one initial individual. Again, we have 200 population consisting of 200 people, and one of them has been initialized to be sick. The positions of the people are randomly assigned, and I want to draw the attention on these individuals having a stick, kind of a walking stick. We will represent these individuals as elders, those that are older than 60 years old. When creating the population, ages have been assigned randomly. So we have a proportion of them that are elders. So in this specific simulation, we have 200 individuals, and 62 of them are elders. This is done randomly. So if I start the model again, we will have for the same population a different number of elders with different initial positions and different sick individual at the beginning. Here I do it again, and we have the individual, the sick individual here next to an elder people. In this simulation we have 60 elders. So we have a few parameters that we can change or we can study. One is the number of people. We will assign it to 200. I might change that to less people, so we might create only 81 or 100, whatever. So I leave it now to 200. I can also change how easy it is to infect each other once you meet someone. So whenever 100% means that whenever someone meets another, this person will get the infection, the virus, if he is not immune. We also have a parameter that tells how long does the virus stays active in the body, how long does it last, the infection. And then we have a parameter that tells the chance of recovery. So for example, here I have said that people has a chance to recover of 75%, but in the case of elder people, this chance is much lower, and I have set it to 25%. So elders have a much higher risk of passing away if they get the virus. And then now we will have a simulation where everybody is allowed to move, just as the first simulation that we saw in the article. So let's do the start of the model. Here we have the individual, the sick individual, and I start the model. Maybe I can do it slower. So let's see what has happened here. We had an initial population of 200 people, from which 60 were elders, and after the simulation, which lasts for about 4 months, many people has disease. So our current population has decreased to 116, and we only have 27 elders left, so less than half of the elder people. When the simulation ends, no one is infected, so we can tell the virus has stopped having effect on the population. 93 of the population was immune, and it took 4 months. And here we can see how the population evolved. So at the beginning, everybody was healthy except but one individual, and the viruses started spreading. So the number of sick individuals started growing. Here we can see this exponential curve that we were seeing. And as more sick individuals appeared, we have less healthy individuals. But after some days, initially after more than 20 days, some start recovering and they get immune. So that's the gray line here. Okay, so at the end we have most of the people immune and no sick people. And here we just have the sick curve isolated, so you can see it easily. Just to see it again so you can analyze it, we will create a simulation again. In this case, it was this elder here that was sick, and we will execute the model and see how sick people grow and then gets down again. So it's the same pattern, a different simulation, but similar patterns. If we repeat again, it's again an elder here. I repeat the simulation. So we have up to 80 people sick. So now we can see how we are able to reproduce the effects that were on the article. Now let's change things slightly. The other simulation that was performed was this simulation where a quarter of individuals were allowed to move. So let's see what happens when we reduce people that can move to a quarter. Again, we have the sick individual here in red, and then we repeat the simulation. Here, only in a few days, nobody get infected, so the virus ends its cycle. Let's do that again. In this case, it's this individual here. I will press go. There is some spreading because this individual was moving, but it was less than 10 people, so the curve is far more flattened than in the other simulations. As it was the case for the article, here is the same. Every simulation will be different. So we will have different results because we might have a different pattern of movement. So each time we execute it, behaves in a different way, but we can get a general pattern. I keep repeating so you can see we have a general pattern where much less individuals get sick if only a few of them are allowed to move. We always have this very flattened curve. So only a few people, diseases, including elders. We can do this once more. Here we have the sick person, but it finishes very quick. Okay. So we can play with how much movement it is allowed to see the effect on the population. So for example, we might have on 75% of the population. So most of the population moves, but still is less than what we had when everybody was allowed to move. If we change that to 50% of the population allowed to move, we can see in this case the individual that was sick was not allowed to move, so the recovery was very quick. Let's see, here we have this individual. Let's see if this individual now is allowed to move. So the population gets, more people get sick, but in a far more controlled way. We can repeat that again to see that every setting gives a different result, especially if the first individual is able to move or not. We can see the effect. And now we can, just for the last thing to try, we can have a 12% of the population able to move, only a few of them. Here we have the individual. We see that it doesn't spread. Let's do that again. The sick individual is this elder individual up here. Let's do it. Very quick. Try again. We have an individual here. Was not allowed to move. Try again. Very quick. So you can see how fast they recover when the movement is really restricted.